So, a warm welcome to every one of you present here today for the sixth chapter of the Gyan series. It is indeed a great privilege for me to invite Professor Archana Parashar, Chair of the Alumni Committee and Media and Public Relation, to say a few words now.
Welcome all the dignitaries present, Shri Debaji Sarkarji, my executive alumni, students, faculty, and other people who have joined online. It gives me immense pleasure to the sixth session of Gyan series. I wish to convey my gratitude to all the alumni present here that despite being a weekend, you were able to take time and you were able to spare time to join the session. Your presence matters a lot. So thank you. And your I expect to have more and more participation in the coming months. We launched let me tell you something about our Gyan series. We launched our Gyan series in the month of August, with Shri Divakar Loshali ji as the first speaker from Orlikon. Subsequently, we have invited several speakers addressing on diverse topics and issues according to your interests. We keep this on last Saturday of the month, and the time and the date is fixed so that all of you by this time, you must have known that we have Gyan series on the last Saturday of every month. The purpose of this is, of course, to see you on an online platform and keep building the network. The industry experts, they delivered short interactive sessions or lectures to the prestigious alumni of IIM Raipur. We also had several city meets this time. We have finished up with the election. We did our homecoming event Memoria also on 10th and 11th of December. And I sincerely thank our director, Professor Ramkumar Kakani, for conceptualizing the idea of Gyan series and guiding the team throughout for the planning of the events. I think from the bottom of my heart that without his consistent support, this event would not have reached the consummation today. A special thanks to our guest speaker, Shri Debaji Sarkar, and of course, we will be interested in knowing from Shri Debaji ji that how from a small town or from a town in West Bengal doing MBA in finance, and then I can see his graph and his journey, his career path, and we will be surely interested in knowing it, sir. From VP to VP Strategic Management at WF, then Head of Commercial Strategy, Visa, then GM Enterprise Payments and Channel Partnerships at Convera. So a big journey, and surely we'll be interested in knowing that, yes, of course, how he reached and how he did that, we'll surely take this. So thank you, and I request Ajita to briefly introduce our speaker, and then we can go ahead.
Sure. Now, let me take this opportunity to introduce our chief guest for the day, Mr. Debajit Sarkar, General Manager, Global Head of Enterprise Payments and Partnerships at Convera. He is a global executive with core expertise in strategy, revenue growth, and strategic partnerships within cards or payments in best-in-class brands. He has had a successful business career in the finance sector for 20 plus years, during which he has worked for corporate giants like Moody's Investor Service, PwC, Capital on Wells Fargo, and Visa. He completed his mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi and pursued his MBA from IIM Calcutta, after which he did executive educations and advanced management programs across various fields of expertise in MIT, UCLA Anderson School of Management, Harvard Business School, and Northwestern University, Kellogg School of Management. The topic of the Gyan series is extremely pertinent to our time, Introduction to Payments of FinTech. With Sir's expertise in the domain of finance, we could not have a better fit for the discussion. IIM Raipur and the Alumni Committee is extremely honored to have you with us, sir. The floor is all yours.
So you are on mute, sir. If you can unmute, Debaji, sir.
Yes. Thank you, Ajita. I'm really humbled by the introduction, and it's an honor to be part of IIM Raipur's Gyan series. And thanks for giving me this opportunity. So maybe, I answered your question that you mentioned, that how did I come from a very small town in West Bengal called Kalyani, 40, 50 kilometers north of Calcutta to here. It's just a lot of hard work and determination that brought me here. After graduating from IIM Calcutta in finance, I wanted to get into a bank. And I tried for many banks, but none of them took me because I had work experience in manufacturing industry. So, but that did not deter me from trying for banks. So I could not get into the banks. So I got into Moody's Investor Services. While working for Moody's Investor Services around late 90s, I realized that the world is shifting towards more e-commerce, .com, and so on and so forth. So the first lesson in my life was that you should passionately look for what you really want, and you will ultimately get it. So I got into the finance. But then I decided I want to get into the world of technology. So that brought me to the US. For the first 5 years, I worked in the US in the technology domain. I got laid off from my job 3 times, not my fault, because companies were going bust, as you can see now. 9/11 happened. US economy was in turmoil. But I continued to keep my ambition of working for a banks. And I finally landed up with HSBC Bank in California. So going back, my first lesson in life is stay passionate about what you want, keep working towards it. You will get it at the right time when the time will be right for you. And working for the banks for the first 5-6 years, I really needed to stay down and keep working through to get my green card. So once I got my green card, I set up new goals to go higher, and that took me to Visa. I had wonderful opportunity to work with Visa across the globe with the senior most management, and have done billions of dollars of revenue for Visa. After 10 years, I thought it's time for me to take a break and explore a new chapter. And after taking about 9 months break, I started my new chapter in Convera. Convera is a private equity-backed fintech company built on top of an acquisition from Western Union Business Solutions. And we are building a brand new fintech platform on the business-to-business cross-border payments. And I'll talk about it as I go into it. So with that, can I start my presentation?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you. So, folks, I really want to keep this presentation interactive. So do not hesitate to ask questions. Stop me and ask questions. That's completely fine with me. The second thing is, this is a little bit of global flavor. So the fintech that you see in India, that's not really how the world operates. India is slightly different for various reasons. So I'll give you a global perspective. So it may or may not align with what you have seen in India. So I'll keep it global, keep it generic, keep it high level. The second thing that I really want to bring out here is that, Indian payment systems to a good extent is because of the government investment in all the infrastructure, close government control. That's not how exactly the world operates. World operates a little more with commercial interest, a little more with competitive things in mind. India is somewhat different. Not that we don't have regulation in the rest of the world, but it is a lot less than what you see in India. Third, I want to mention is that I have some knowledge of Indian market, but that's limited. Again, for the interest, payments is a massive field. So for the interest of this session, I kept out mobile banking, crypto, blockchain, and general banking, right? We can talk about it if you're interested. But right now, I'll stay focused on a few key topics, and as I go through, you'll find it. But do stop if you have questions. Okay, so the first thing is, payments ecosystems is one of the largest and the most vibrant ecosystem connecting banks, non-banks, consumers, businesses, tech providers, governments across the world. Payments is what keeps the economy going. Example, Visa system stopped working in UK for about an hour. Entire UK's economy almost stopped because people cannot get into planes, buses, they cannot shop, they cannot do anything. So UK government called our CEO to say, this is something that cannot happen. So understand the importance of payment systems or payments ecosystem. Like Visa is one of the payment ecosystems Think about all the other payment ecosystem, how they're connected to the economy and drives the economy. The global payments is dramatically changing, driven by government initiatives, as you can see in the India, so is in other parts of the world, to bring efficiency, reduce cost. The regulation around payments is dramatically changing. New technology is influencing, new business models coming in. There's rise in mobile commerce and e-commerce, and there are a lot of innovation. So all these things getting commingled, and that is driving the changes in the payments that we see. Digital payment is particularly very interesting because it's fast, it enables money transfer around the clock, it's relatively secure, provides convenience, it's trackable. So digital payments is really, embraced by both the corporates and the consumers and over the cash. And it's changing the nature way that people interact with money with significant implications on the business. Digital payments are becoming more and more embedded in everyday life. Going forward, your car expected to be enabled with card, some kind of payments. So as you drive into, but potentially into the gas station, your payments can be automatically made. Your home will have some kind of devices that can make payments for utility bills. You can have wearables, you can have Internet of Things that will make payments automatically. That world is not very far. For professionals like you and I, why should they be thinking about the payments? Because it is a very big industry. It's a massive industry, and it has three-dimensional growth. What do I mean by three-dimensional growth? Simple is the economy is growing, it grows with it. The second is it displaces cash. So it grows in another dimension by just displacing cash. And third is because of technological shifts, there are new innovations, there are new use cases coming in across the globe, and that is helping expand the payments across the globe. So it is growing a lot faster than many of the traditional industries. And it is also a great place for entrepreneurs to start new business, new ideas, and build their own company. And you must be seeing that's happening in India in a very big way. However, it is a very complex industry, right? It's not just technology, it's just not payment rails. The most important thing as you build a business is whether or not you make money. The economics are very difficult, and because it is shared by multiple entities within the value chain, and government influences through regulation and pricing constraints. Having said that, you want to build a career, this is a great place to build a career. All right. Okay, let's talk about the market size, because I already told you this is a massive market. Globally, you can break the payments market into two pieces. Business to business are commercial payments and consumer payments, right? Commercial payments alone, $125 trillion in 2021. $125 trillion. India's economy is around $5-6 trillion. So think about it globally. The payment industry alone is $125 trillion. By the way, I would highly recommend you guys to read 2022 McKinsey Global Payments Report. 2022 McKinsey's Global Payments Report. And they have a series of reports. They publish a report every year. That's a great place to get all the information. Some of the information that I'm sharing, I collected from there. So you should go and read that if you really are interested in building your career in this domain. Going back. So it's a $125 billion industry. It's going to double in the next 6-7 years, right? 2/3 is domestic and 1/3 is cross-border payment. And I'll talk about cross-border payments a lot because that's where the money is. It is cross-border and global payment. The business-to-business payment is less regulated compared to consumer payments. It's very complex though. Significant opportunity to drive innovation. Not a lot has happened as tremendous amount of innovation has happened in the consumer space. On the consumer side, I didn't get the actual number, but the market size somewhere between $30 to $45 trillion. And the number little varies primarily because the data from China is a little bit muddy. So it's very difficult to get a good number. 90% of is domestic, extremely high regulation in most markets, particularly anything to do with debit or banks. Government keeps a good control on that. Most markets rely on debit cards or debits or funding, own source of funding, except in the US. US, we have 50% credit cards and 50% debit cards for consumer payments. It's a relatively simpler payment, but tremendous innovation has happened during the last decade. So making money in this domain and the consumer fintech is very difficult. All right. So I gave you the market size from a volume perspective, amount of money that flows through the system, $125 trillion and about 30 to 40, $45 trillion. But if you bring them together from a revenue perspective, how much money the participants in this industry are making. So McKinsey study, based on McKinsey study, 2021, McKinsey estimates the total money that participants made is $2.1 trillion. That's the revenue number. So that's going to them as a top line revenue number, $2.1 trillion. And it's expected to be around $3.3 trillion. Again, if you look at the bar, the black bars are essentially Asia Pacific. A good part of the money is getting made in Asia. To a good extent, it's driven by commercial banking or cross-border banking or business banking, because the multiplicity of smaller countries all around with a lot of FX margins and interest rate being high, a lot of the money is getting made in Asia Pacific, and China is a big contributor to this number. Asia is also growing faster. So if you look at 2021 versus 2026, Asia Pacific is growing almost 70% in this time frame compared to others not growing as fast. All right. Now, let's look at it in a different angle. If you break the same pot of money, say $2.1 trillion, how much is driven by commercial banking and how much is driven by consumer payments, so commercial payments and consumer payments, right? So when we look at Asia Pacific, as I said, the commercial payment has a bigger share. It's close to 64%. Whereas in America, if you look at North America, right, commercial payment share is 39%, because in America, consumer payment is so good that banks focus on consumer payments. And just because in America, the consumer payment is not as regulated as in Asia Pacific, as greatly regulated as in India, ability for commercial entities to make money in America is a lot higher. EMEA has a lot of regulations. Similarly, the consumer payments does not generate as much revenue in EMEA, similar to America. Latin America, consumer payments is weak. A lot of cash still being used, similar to India. The payment system is very weak. The consumer payments is relatively the share of the commercial payment is relatively low. Okay, let me move to the next page. Any questions so far? I'm happy to stop and answer questions.
Any questions from the participants? Yes.
No?
Yes, I think we can have it towards the end if they wish. Sure, sir.
Okay, sure. Right. So here is another way to look at it. So if you look at it, there are two axes. On the horizontal axis, it's revenue per transaction. For every transaction, how much money is made in dollars. And on the vertical axis, it is payments revenue per capita. If you look at US, payments revenue per capita is way above rest of the world. It's because it's a developed economy, very much digitally enabled consumer and commercial payments, as well as it's not as regulated, so the companies can make money. So revenue is a lot higher in US compared to the rest of the world. Just a picture. I'm happy to share the deck also after the discussion, so you can have it. Little shift to the focus. India, if you look at Indian consumer payments, $160 billion of consumer payments in 2023, estimated to be $160 billion. Now, let me share give you a perspective. If you look at consumer payments in the US, it's somewhere around $10 trillion of consumer payments. $10 trillion of consumer payments in the US. Yeah, including debit, credit, everything from the consumer side of the equation, compared to $160 billion. So India has a lot to catch up, but it is growing really fast. Okay, I'm going to switch topic a little bit right now. You look at payments mostly in India from a domestic perspective, because most of the activities, all the UPI or a RuPay and everything that you see, all domestic, right? But there's not much money there from a commercial standpoint. That's great for you, India as an economy. That's great for financial inclusion. That's great for moving the economy. But you as a consumer, or you as a company, right? You want to really explore life beyond India, or you really want to, as a company, want to make money, one should think about cross-border payments. What happens when one of my customer travels abroad, or when one of my customer buys stuff from an online store outside of the country, right? Or a business wants to transfer money to another country. So those are the different instances of cross-border payment. Why cross-border payment is more lucrative than domestic payment? The primary reason is government really cannot play a lot of regulatory game on a cross-border payment, because it's across multiple countries. So India effectively cannot do a whole lot, rather than prohibiting money going out, which is restricting dollar flow. But other than that, they cannot really control the price a whole lot. So regulation is low. The second most important thing is foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is one of the biggest market around the world. So whenever you do cross-border payments, foreign exchange comes into picture, because you need to take your rupee, convert it into dollars, and pay to US guys, or convert it into euros to pay to Europeans, and so on and so forth. So whenever conversion happens, these payment companies make a ton of money. So less regulation gives pricing power. Foreign exchange gives an opportunity to earn money. So cross-border is a unique component if you really want to commercially build your business globally and make money. So this page, I'm going to lay out a few variables for you to think through, okay? If you look at consumers, what do? I make payment to buy stuff from a business. That's why consumer to business payment. Second thing, what I do, I send money to my friends and family, money transfer, which is called peer-to-peer money transfer. So those are the two primary use cases for consumer payments. On the commercial payments, right? Business pays another business. For our suppliers, vendors, or for other services, everyone needs to make a payment, locally or globally, right? Then there's this new set of entities called multi-sided marketplaces. I'll talk about it a little later, which is consumer pays to the platform and platform pays to the underlying merchants, right? eBay is a great example. These are the three different variables: consumer payments, commercial payments. The second way to look at domestic payment versus cross-border payment, right? So think about it this way: consumer payments, domestic; consumer payments, cross-border; commercial payment, domestic; commercial payment, cross-border. So you can have these multiple variables and tie together to create a business model. Within the cross-border, you can, as I said, online or physical. You can have remittances. Somebody from the US is sending money, or somebody from India is sending money, right? So consumer to consumer. Business to business. You're buying some stuff from China, you need to send money, right? Or there's a new business model where, particularly for marketplaces is like, think about Alibaba. A lot of small businesses sell stuff on Alibaba platform. And after Alibaba collecting those payments from consumers, or the buyers need to pay out to this large number of small suppliers or large number of small merchants. That's a very unique way of paying out to the underlying merchants, and it's typically called a mass payment or mass payout system. The next thing, also need to think about payment network or payment rails. Again, those variables you can connect: consumer payments, domestic, national payment networks. So a debit card running in India, running on RuPay, are running on an NPCI platform. So that's those variables you can connect. Similarly, consumer payments, domestic running on open loop, which is Visa and MasterCard and American Express, an open loop, which is accepted everywhere, or a closed loop, which is a merchant branded card, okay? So these variables you can connect. Consumers domestically making bill payments. Similarly, commercial guys making cross-border payments with non-card payments, based payments. So payment rails are typically think about best way to think about it is two payment rails, card-based payment network or non-card-based payment network. What do I mean by non-card-based payment network? Non-card-based payment networks are essentially an issue check. By the way, this is an American spelling. In India, you will spell CHEQUE. Or you pay through, NPCI, or in the US, you call it ACH network, or you can pay through RTGS. SWIFT is for international payment. If you're making commercial payment internationally, you need to use SWIFT. Where is US domestic kind of your RTGS? And of course, blockchain is coming into the mix, and I'll stay away from it right now. The other set of variable you can think about payment method, right? Do you pay with a card or pay with a check? Do you pay online? Do you use a wallet? Do you use a QR code? Do you use an app like PayPal? Do you use virtual cards? It's a new innovation happening. I'll not get into it. It's again a little complex. Or you just do bank transfer, right? On the commercial side, there are very different ways of paying the commercial banking or business banking, whether you paid automatically or use the file-based systems. Or correspondence banking is for cross-border payments. Okay, so these variables all connect, crisscross. So you can create a permutation and combination to come up with your business model. So here are a few other variables. I'll not go into the details, like how is your funding method? Do you take credit or do you not take credit? Buy now, pay later is a new innovation, right? And the time and the cost is very important. Do you pay instantly? Do you pay that reaches after a day or after 2 days, after 3 days? Cost structure, how much costly it is for you to pay. Particularly important for business payments. Acceptance. Acceptance is very important, amazingly important. One of the reasons RuPay cannot go very far, because the moment you step outside India, RuPay as a payment card will not be accepted outside India, right? Whereas Visa, MasterCard, no matter where you go on earth, no matter which corner you go, it'll be accepted. So whether or not a card is accepted, you can carry, but it will not be accepted. So having an accepted footprint for a business is very critical, right? Think about it this way. Paytm is not accepted outside of India, or Paytm is accepted in Singapore. So those are the different ways to think about it. For business payments, one of the important things becomes, okay, I want to send a payment to 30 different countries because my suppliers are there. Mr. Payment Provider, can you really send my money? No, I only operate in 20 countries. So you lose the business. So how many countries a business operates becomes very important. How many currencies the payment company supports becomes very important. And then there are regulatory issues around domestic regulation, compliance, credit issuance, PCI DOS, and so on and so forth. So all these variables you can connect and come up with a business model. Any question? Okay, I'll again shift gears right now. So let's look at 3-4 different participants in why the payments ecosystem is becoming very important, right? Because if you want to do something with a global e-commerce marketplace, there's nothing but digital payment is the only way to interact. You cannot interact with any other way. There are some methods of cash on delivery and stuff like that, but again, that's very little. Primarily, you need digital payments. Online travel agency, if you want to buy tickets on Expedia or MakeMyTrip.com, ideal way to do it is digital payments. Somehow you need to be able to pay digitally. Gig economy players like Uber and Airbnb has completely changed the game around how you pay, right? I think I kept it double. So the business model are changing because of the new participants in the ecosystem are coming up, and their needs are very different, and they desperately need digital payments. So as they are working with consumers and evolving the digital payments, the rest of the other businesses also getting the benefit of it. So that's about type of merchant that is changing the payment. Okay, again, I'm shifting gear. Let's look at the consumer. How does Visa, MasterCard, or American Express, not American Express, but mostly Visa, MasterCard, we call it open loop network work, right? So you as a consumer, you get a card. So on the very left on this side here, you get a card, you go to a merchant, buy, whether it's online or physical store, right? You go and buy, swipe your card, you buy the stuff. Oops. You buy the stuff, and the transaction flows through somebody called payments gateway or a payment facilitator through an acquirer or acquirer processor. It's a bank, through Visa to somebody called an issuer processor who works on behalf of the bank to process your payment and say, you know what, this is a good card. I like, it's completely authorizable. I authorize the card. So it goes back through the process. You get the authorization. Merchant said, yes, the card is good. You take your goods and walk out the door. This was the traditional payment systems, and used to call four-party payment model. Why four-party? Visa or MasterCard was not counted in this party, right? It is essentially on this side. Issuer processor is the entity that helps bank issue cards and process payments. So sometimes they're together, sometimes they're two different companies working together, okay? Visa is in the middle, helps to facilitate. Visa connects all the 40 to 50 million merchants across the globe with 20, 30,000 banks on the other side. So it's a many-to-many problem. So think about it. Any of these 10,000 banks customers, and that can run into hundreds of millions of customers, can go to any of these 60 million merchants and swipe the card and take stuff, and it'll be approved in less than a second, and you can walk out the door and everything will be settled automatically. The merchant will get paid, you will be billed, and things will happen. So that's the beauty of this open loop Visa MasterCard model that operates across the globe. Now what's happening is, because of opportunity to innovate and digitize, a lot of things changing in this traditional ecosystem, and which is where fintechs have played a big game. So I'm just focusing on only one little piece called acquiring bank or processing bank, okay? That piece has changed so dramatically. On the front end, consumers no longer just carry a card. They can carry a wallet, they can carry a QR code, they can carry Apple Wallet, they have contactless cards. They call it various form factors. These are called form factors, right? It's essentially a card, but it comes in very different shapes and sizes. And then in between, a lot of new guys have come in. They're bringing in new innovation, new software, different use cases based on different verticals, and they're changing the game, right? You might have heard of these guys called Stripe, Adyen, Braintree. They are payment gateways. They support online commerce. They're guys like PayPal. They help facilitate both online commerce as well as they're also a payment method. They're value-added services where IBM and Oracle play their game. Shopify, Magento, and all these guys helping independent software vendors. So like that, the whole thing is changing and expanding, and then new fintechs are coming into this space. Something similar is happening on the other side of the equation. So what I have shown you is just the acquirer processors on the very right-hand side. Something similar happening on the issuer processor side of the aisle. One little example, if you think about Apple Wallet, not sure you have seen it, must have seen Google Wallet. Google Wallet, what it does is that it replaces a dumb physical card with a smart wallet where all transaction, all details will immediately be logged and you get to see it. In a physical plastic, you can't do that. So they have completely changed the game on the issuer processing side or the banking side of the aisle and enabled or empowered the consumers. So a lot of it has happened in that side of the aisle as well. Here is a set of examples of different startups that are working in the domain. It's not a complete list, just an example. We're working on the consumer payment side to change or disrupt the consumer payments. I'll stop. Any question? I hope I haven't lost you.
Perfectly fine. Any questions from the audience? Yes, till now.
All right.
Yes, one
like
student has raised. Sandeep, yes, Sandeep.
Please, Sandeep.
Hi, Mr. Saka. Good morning.
Sure.
Until now, it has been going very well. Thank you for that. I have one doubt. We hear a lot about this CBDC, in the last couple of months, especially from December, January 2023. And we see that there are some meetings that are going to happen on 30th and 31st of January too. And some countries have already started their pilot program on this digital currency. Do you see this as a threat to the person model that you have spoken right now about, or how is this better than this this Google Pay, whatever digital payments we do? Some light on this, please.
Yeah, so crypto and CBDC, CBDC is is a form of crypto where they expect the cryptocurrency to maintain or peg to dollars or some other currency so that its value is restored. But again, you have seen in the recent past, not all CBDCs kind of could withstand its value for various reasons. But primary use case for CBDC is for cross-border payments to eliminate FX. That's their game plan. Okay, that's their primary game plan. Is that so? This is how it works. I'm going to convert my rupee to a CBDC, and then that CBDC, I'll automatically through blockchain will go to say Europe, right? So one CBDC goes to Europe, and then from that CBDC gets converted into euro, and then my payment happens. By doing so, they essentially want to disrupt something called correspondence banking, and I'll share with what correspondence banking is. There are two things happen. One is it can give a lot of visibility and transparency. The second thing is it can provide a centralized payment system leveraging blockchain that does not the world doesn't have it today. Put it this way: the world doesn't have a centralized payment system for cross-border payments. CBDC, with the help of blockchain, can potentially someday create a centralized cross-border payment systems that can lower the foreign exchange cost, and it can eliminate some profit for banks. But that's very far-fetched, very, very, very far-fetched. The second thing is, foreign currency market is very volatile. So think about it this way, in the world market, I don't know how much you know about foreign exchange. In the world market, most of the foreign currencies are pegged against dollars. And not a lot of countries likes that, particularly China and Russia and some of these countries. They don't like it. Every opportunity they want to disrupt, they want to kick the dollars. So for them, if they can peg their local currency or national currency to a CBDC that's internationally accepted among at least their friends, they would prefer to do so than pegging it to dollars. But unfortunately, my reading of this whole thing is that for CBDC to really stand on its feet and disrupt any economy, it's like decades away. And they may find its fit in certain corridors in certain use cases, but that's how the world will operate. CBDC will take 5% of the game. So think about it this way: a neighbor comes and builds a house next to your house. We can still live together. It doesn't mean that I need to leave my house because somebody else came next door.
Yes, thank you. That should, yes, that's clear. Because one more, just a follow-up, if that's okay.
Sure.
If my memory serves right, I was off late seeing the pilot program in Saudi Arabia, which is trying to aim at domestic payments too. So how successful do you think this will be in a country like India, and something on that front?
So here is my take. I think India, there is a slide a little later. India has built one of the world's finest payment systems, RTGS, and India doesn't need all this mess. India has built, and the world envies India based what India has built and where India is going. So I personally think India doesn't need to mess with all this CBDC. Our literacy rate is low. We have a lot of poor people. Their focus is to earn their bread and and go back home and sleep well and have a square meal. They're not interested in all the CBDC. So any good government will not mess with it. Saudi Arabia is so rich and they have so much money to throw away. They can do a lot of stuff. But India doesn't need to do that.
Sure, that should answer. Thank you.
Sure.
Darshak.
All right. Okay, so I'm a little bit, again, shifting gears. I'm very quickly shifting gears, guys. Feel free to ask me questions later on also, or send me emails. I'm happy to answer. So I'm shifting gear to business-to-business payment. So business-to-business payment is a lot more complex. And there are a lot less innovation has happened in that space. Still, there are a lot of check being used, a lot of inefficient payment methods. The cross-border payment is still a little messy, but it's a large market. So the opportunities to innovate is also to that extent relatively large and therefore make money. The reason business-to-business payment is complicated is because there is a workflow from purchase orders to invoice, the payment terms, account receivables, account payables, right? There are all these different elements that got involved. And then finally, after getting through all this paperwork, you need to make a payment, make sure that the payment is received, and reconciliation and all that stuff. So there are two elements in business-to-business payment. One element is called workflow. The second element is actual payment, right? So tying this together and creating a good payments ecosystem across different businesses with different needs is complicated. And it's not happening, but everyone is trying right now to really break through into that domain. And quite a bit of good work has actually happened. It can reduce cost, it can make the business efficient, it can improve profitability, reduce fraud, and so on and so forth, right? The economics of business-to-business cross-border payment is very attractive. And that's where my company, Convera, plays. We operate across 200 countries. We handle 140 currencies. We do FX, we do hedging, we transfer money, we charge fees. So that's the domain, really important. A lot of companies are operating in that domain. And we're going to see a lot of innovation in that domain as well. The key issues are difficult to track payment, high fees, data security is an issue, and transparency is also an issue. Okay. So I was talking about, so here's a sample workflow. You're talking about like B2B has two things, right? One is the customer identifies a need, issues a purchase order, creates a purchase order, sends it to the supplier, supplier receives it, acknowledges to the buyer that I received the purchase order, then he processes the purchase order, you come from 1 to 2. After you come to the purchase order, then the logistics of receiving and shipping comes into the picture. Then suppliers, account receivable department generates and sends an invoice. Customer receives, customer's account payables gets that invoice. Customer's accounts payable department makes a payment. The payment goes through the either domestic or cross-border, and then acknowledgement comes through, and then reconciliation happens. So there are two elements. One is the payment, which is very simple, but the whole workflow behind it is very complex, and that is what the industry is trying to solve, particularly in business payments. Banks are not capable of solving these problems. They can do it for specific cases for large businesses, but doing it for every other businesses, it's very difficult for them. So they're falling short. And that gives an opportunity for fintechs to come in. Again, I'm switching gears. So we talked about workflow, but the second part is payment. For business payment, particularly, as well as consumer payments, one of the finest innovation that is coming is real-time payments. Instantly making a payment, it goes through. You don't have to wait. You as a supplier, you instantly can get payment. India has built finest systems, and US is building it. It's still not there. Europe has done a good job. Australia has it. and few other countries across the globe has it. China has it. Russia has built a good payment systems. So real-time payment system is going to be the game changer. Having said that, real-time payment is still domestic payment. You can use it domestically. The world's all these real-time payment systems are not connected together, right? So for you to send payments from India to Australia, both have real-time payment systems, but they're not connected. They don't talk to each other. So you need a third rail to connect, and that rail is SWIFT today. But hey, at least if I can take my money from India to Australia, I know I can send it fast. I don't have to wait. Like if I need to go to Bangladesh, I need to wait quite a while to send the money. And good thing is, based on some numbers that I saw, India is doing amazing, is staying ahead of the rest of the world in terms of a number of payment processed in real time in India. Okay, correspondence banking, which is where banks make most of the money beyond their investment banking. Okay, investment banking is where they make a lot of money. Another place they make a lot of money is correspondent banking, particularly the international banks. So what is correspondence banking? Think about it this way. You are a buyer, so you're a manufacturer. Say you are a Bajaj Auto. You want to buy something from China, right? You go to your local bank, right? What is the bank? Say State Bank of India. Say, hey, I need to make a payment. Can you help? State Bank of India will go to Citibank because the Citibank is a global international bank. So payment will be sent to Citibank. Citibank will send a SWIFT message that is the international payment rail. It's essentially a messaging system that says to Citibank, say Shanghai, hey, there is a payment from Bajaj that needs to go to XYZ supplier's bank. So then Citibank Shanghai will take the payment and give it to the beneficiary or supplier's bank. And that's how the payments get made today. So in this system, Citibank is very important because they're the one who can talk across the broad border. And SWIFT is a very important system to kind of connect the two different banks in two different countries. And banks make a lot of money through this correspondence banking, but they're very inefficient, they're expensive, and these require disruption. So there are a lot of disruption may be coming, and CBDC is potentially targeting this domain to displace this correspondence bank. Think about a blockchain system that initiator bank can leverage blockchain to connect with the beneficiary bank without going through a correspondence bank. That can be a potential area where CBDCs can be leveraged. Okay. Sandeep, any question, feel free.
I think Darshak, Abhishek has one question. Yes.
Yeah, sir, actually one question, especially on the B2B payment front. What I could see is that a major part of this B2B payment requires some bit of integration with the ERP systems of these vendors, primarily because the PO, the purchase order, the invoice, which kind of has to go through, and then the payment link, etc., has to be provided to the purchaser or the seller at the other end. Now, these integrations across accounting systems, I think few of the players in US are also trying to do. But what is the major challenge here, especially from B2B payment perspective? Because still most of these payments are happening physical. I think your slide mentioned that 50% of B2B payments still happen through checks. And that kind of shows that digital payment still is a very, very nominal share of the total B2B payments.
Yeah, so the problem happens in multiple stages. If you look at it, a problem happens in reconciliation. The purchase order and the payments, and particularly when the large number of payments through, the reconciling and making sure that not making any error and that thing happening in automated fashion is what is needed, because you don't want to put people to do those checks and balances. So the moment you do put people checks and balances, it breaks down. So that's one. So the whole process requires some level of automation, some level of AI, ML into it to check and all those things. So to your point, it's not only, there are so many places there are innovation happening, right? Accounts payable, as if you see, these are the different areas where innovation is happening in business payments. Account payable automation, page management procurement systems, recurring billing systems, expense management systems, account receivables automation, supply chain financing. So there are multiple places, things happening. It all depends on the use case that a business needs to support, right? Different businesses have different use cases. Some has few suppliers on a recurring basis, they know how much to pay. But think about, give me an example of like, a marketplace. Their payments are amazingly complex. They receive payments from consumer through various channels, having this payment receive them, keeping their own commission, paying taxes, separating it out, and paying back to the vendors across the globe or across the country with small and different amount of payment is pretty complex. So they're all use case dependent, industry dependent. So the kind of payment needs that a manufacturer has is very different than a payment needs a hospital has, right? The payment need that a hospital has is very different from the payment need as an e-commerce business has. So because of this different nature of the businesses and different payment needs and their level of integration and the ERP systems, a lot of things is still manual. So ultimately they decide, best thing for us to do is to issue checks until we are integrated.
Right. Just a follow-up question to that was basically which of these modules or basically modules is Convera kind of solving, like which of these modules it is able to solve?
Yeah, so our primary focus is cross-border payment specialists at the very far corner, right? Having said that, we not only do cross-border payment specialists, but we are also integrating with account payable systems. So we connect with account payable systems. We have two different ways of doing it. We have something called a MassPay API. So we plug in our API into the account payable systems to pick up the data and pass it on through our cross-border payment systems to the other side of the world. We also have something called a file-based systems where we ask those guys who cannot really integrate, give us a file at the end of the day, and we process the file and process it through our systems. So we are focusing on different verticals. One of our primary vertical is financial services, where what happens is if you look back here, right? If you look back here, give me a second, why is this not moving? Yeah, if you look back here, see, you need correspondence bank to send payments. In Convera, we have our own banking network across the globe. We don't need correspondence bank in 40 different countries. So we completely bypass Citibank and Bank of America and other guys. We take our own payments. So we have our way of disintermediating them and taking payments. So that's another thing that we do. But we are slowly migrating into a new set of payment systems that will be essentially cloud-based, as well as something called virtual accounts. So I'll not get into the virtual account right now because it's going to be a lot more complicated. So I'm happy to talk to you separately.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Okay, I'm again quickly moving. I don't know why it gets stuck. So these are the different problems that B2B payment is trying to solve. Here is a list of companies getting into that space. Although Visa, or MasterCard, primarily operates in the consumer space, but their main focus going forward is to solve business-to-business commerce problem. Why? They think they have their own card-based network that they can leverage to send business payments. So they're going to leverage their own payment network, similarly the way CBDC is trying to leverage, a blockchain as a network. So there are different domains, the innovation happening, and different players are doing expense management, recurring billing, account receivables automation, supply chain financing, all these different places, there are different companies are working, and it is getting pretty crowded. Just a little bit of hint around economics. It's very difficult to make money in India, no matter what you do, because on the debit side of the aisle, it's closely controlled how much money you can make by the government. And there are so many different participants in the ecosystems to process the payments. Everyone, needs to recover their cost. So there are processing fee, transaction fee, other fees involved that sometimes, these entities charge. One of the interesting thing in the US primarily is credit and commercial card interchange. Interchange is what a merchant pays to the banks who issue cards. It's pretty lucrative. It runs around 2% of the fee. So that's why US banks, card issuing banks, make a lot of money. There are some regulation in the US and rest of the world around debit. So there's a lot less money to be made in the debit. Interest income is definitely one way to make money in credit. But in a country like India, you don't have really many credit cards, so banks cannot really make money. The other ways the companies are trying to make money is, leveraging data, loyalty services, promoting some kind of services, either providing ads and stuff like that. So that's another way to make money. Building a viable business model and having a large scale is the necessity to build a sustainable business model in the payments domain. Okay. I have a few points on India, but I don't want to talk much about India because I guess that you guys could know a lot more than I do. Bottom line is, government of India, with the help of RBI, has done an amazing job on building not only the payment systems, the backbone of the economy, but expanding it, in various other domains, including mobile banking, bill pay, payment aggregators, UPI, 123 Pay, and so on and so forth. It's just amazingly well, and India can serve as a model for the rest of the world the way they are building it. But one point of caution about the way I see about India is that the moment government gets involved in managing and maintaining some of these core systems, the innovation happens at a lot lesser pace. It's good for government to invest to begin with, but ongoing basis, government's appetite to invest will reduce, and therefore the innovation may potentially slow down because everyone will expect government to do so, right? So it all depends on which government is there and how much budget they're allocating to keep the system running and updating it. Hopefully, right now it's top of the line. 10 years from now, India should be able to allocate money to keep the innovation at a level that can beat the world. Is going to be something that we would like to see. With that, I'll stop and take many more questions.
Okay, yes, Giridhar.
Hi, Mr. Sarkar. I actually want to take you back onto the cards on the interchange. So from what I understand, interchange is something that is being charged, that 2% or 3% that you mentioned is charged on the merchants that are accepting the cards, right? So I've been confused. I've been looking into US payment systems. Why would a merchant accept if they're being charged, right? That nature of, I know cards as mode is being accepted generally right now more. So why would a merchant be laying out fees to accept something that is costing them?
Yeah, no, great question. Great question. So it's like that, right? We all pay taxes, say property taxes, right? When everyone pays property taxes, there is no issue. If suddenly, one house is charged property tax, the rest of the houses are not, then it's an issue. So something like that. What happens is in the US, the card is so prevalent that every merchant pays for it. So they're at a same level playing field. So they all jack up their prices of the basic products and services. You see what I'm saying? It kind of, at the end of the day, if you are a seller, you will look at, if I bought my product at $5 and it cost me $1 more to kind of do everything else, including payments, so my cost is $6, I need to sell it at $7 or $8. They somehow bake it into the overall costing, and everybody does so. So they are not at a competitive disadvantage in accepting cards, right? So it is a part of the cost of doing business. Like cost of doing business is renting a space. Like that, you have to think about it. Point number 2 is that because of credit cards and because of widespread usage, consumer doesn't hesitate to go to a shop and buy anything. Without that, a consumer probably may say, you know what, I don't have money in my pocket, I'm not buying it. So overall economy gets a boost because everyone has a card in their pocket. And it indirectly helps the economy, indirectly helps consumer spend, and indirectly, merchant gets the benefit. At the end of the day, you may see that merchant is paying. Ultimately, my belief is it's consumer pays for it all.
Okay. Yeah, agreed. So just a follow-up question on that. If that is the case with cards, then something like a FedNow, I'm not completely sure on how it will work, but something like that can disrupt that very easily, right?
No, it will not. See, there's the beauty of the card. As a consumer, even if you pay whatever that you don't see, you pay. In the US, Visa and MasterCard called zero liability. No matter what happens to your card, you lose it, somebody else take it, somebody mischarges it. All you need to say that this is something that I didn't do. And merchant will have to eat it or bank will have to eat it. So consumers are always protected. That's point number 1. Point number 2, you buy something in Amazon, you call Amazon and say that, I don't want this product, return, immediately the payment will be processed and the money will be returned back to you, right? And there are some dispute rules that all these merchants sign with Visa and MasterCard to make sure that they follow it. They cannot mess around with it. So they need to follow a rule, otherwise they'll be kicked out of the Visa and MasterCard ecosystem. Given the whole ecosystem, the way it operates, the amount of consumer protection that they provide, the consumer services they provide, consumer will never leave their cards and go to FedNow because FedNow cannot do it. Having said that, FedNow will come up or prop up in few places, like paying a utility bill. You don't need to reverse. So maybe paying a utility bill, doing this or that, insurance payments, they'll be used, but I don't see them going to be used in a going to replace in a big way.
Understood. Yeah, thanks.
Particularly those who use your credit card, I'm giving you a secret. But just by using credit card, I get reward more than $1,000 annually. So I'm not.
Yeah, I understand that interchange is passed on to the cashbacks. Yeah.
I think we can take up one more last question. If anybody is interested. Darshak, I think you had some question. Darshak is here.
Yes, ma'am, but it got answered while the discussion.
Anybody else? Any other question? Yes, sir. SM Swamiji, yes.
Yeah, good morning, sir. I have one question regarding this. This B2B business, how the regulatory guidelines will be followed by this entity, payment systems. There is a FEMA guideline. Although these FEMA guidelines are vested with this initiator, but how the entity will be safeguard from this?
FEMA is a US guideline or FEMA is an Indian guideline?
FEMA is our Indian. In case of you are dealing with foreign currency exchange, FEMA rule.
Right. Yeah, so it's a bit complicated dealing with India, to be honest with you. So we shy away from dealing a lot of payments from India. It's a bit complicated. I don't know the FEMA rules, to be honest with you. So I would say I'm ignorant. I don't know. I'm happy to look at and get back to you, but right now I cannot answer that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes.
Any more questions? If not, folks, thank you so much.
Sorry,
somebody sent a question. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not particularly a question, but rather I have 2 points to make. One, if you can just suggest how I can go about understanding payment failures. I'm working with an organization that is building up payment systems right now, and also I would like to connect on the same, with regards to the same organization, on the business opportunities with Conveyor.
Yeah, I'm happy to help you on the first one. That's within my wheelhouse. The second one, depending on what use cases you want to support, if there are ways to build business together, I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out. I can drop my email here.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Yes. So a big thanks to Shri Debajit Sarkarji, because I think it was a wonderful presentation, enlightening one, and I think we had so much of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge from his side, and learning, and especially about the global card network ecosystems, how they function, how they work, and different types, and about the commercial and consumer payments, and so many things we learned today. And I'm sure that my alumni must have been benefited from this session. Over to you, Ajitha.
Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. So on behalf of the alumni committee, we are glad to express our vote of thanks. A very special thanks to our speaker, Shri Debajit Sarkar, for accepting our invitation and for being here with us virtually today despite his hectic schedule. Your thoughts and views on the current payment ecosystem, market size, cross-border payments, payment business models, B2B payments, and even about future of digital payments. All these were extremely insightful to us, sir. And we thank our director, Professor Ramkumar Kakani, chairperson, Professor Archana Parashar, for standing by us and making this event possible. And I would even be failing in my duty even if I did not thank our esteemed alumni for being here and making this day a wonderful and memorable one. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Amazing audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debajit ji. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.